Okay, I started recording. Maybe we'll wait a few more minutes. I think probably Unimatrix is not going to join. It looks like they are changing representatives for TB and GB.
And this is Jens. Dora is gonna connect. She's just having some issues with the link, but she'll connect shortly from Hikvision.
Okay. So did we agree on where to put the recordings for this? Should we put them on YouTube? I think we already put some of them on YouTube, and as an alternative, there was another site that was available from China as well.
Yeah, I think we put it on YouTube, and I actually put it on a site that they could access after that.
Yeah,
we could do that again. So if you start by putting it on YouTube.
Yeah. Also, we can do the same thing for the GB calls that are recorded.
Yeah. There are some different platforms now for video, like Odyssey. So maybe I will look at that again to see which platform is best suited to have best reach.
I think so. It's better. The URL is described in the meeting minutes. How do you feel?
Yeah, the URL to the recording should be included in the minutes of meeting. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you will upload the recorded video to the YouTube, and so however, so it's easy to access for us if you describe the URL in the meeting minutes on the GitLab.
Yep. We've done that before, so we'll do the same thing here.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, Dora is joined, so I think we can start. So this meeting is mainly to find the consensus around what we want to do in Unimatrix and what different companies are interested in. So first point is just to get a consensus about which components each company think is important and what should be included in Unimatrix. So I divided it up a bit about the host requirements and the device APIs and which programming languages. Also, if you believe that we need an orchestration or app management component. So maybe I can start from Axis side. So regarding the host requirements, so far we require some kernel configurations to enable to run containers. So those requirements should be maybe more specifically like they do for Docker. They have a script that checks if your device is capable of running. So we should have a similar thing for Unimatrix that checks if your device has enabled all the required. There will be, I mean, some required and some optional configuration. So, and then we require a containerd and runc. And then right now for Larad, we require dbus for communicating with Larad server. So those are the host requirements. Regarding the APIs, so far we have a video API, which is OpenCV. We have an inference API, which is Larad. And then we suggest to have MQTT as the output API for communicating results to server. And then regarding the programming languages, we have talked about C++ and Python, and that's for our uses. That's enough right now. And then about orchestration or app management, we want to focus on Ansible because that's what we are looking at Axis right now, and we think Ansible it solves the cases that we want. We can go into the specific use cases in next point, in point 2, what we want to solve with the orchestration, or maybe we should, I don't know if we should say orchestration because that's such a huge term. So maybe it's better to say app management here or container management. So that's from Axis side. So I would like to hear from the other companies what are their views about the components.
So according to Hyper members, so as I mentioned before, so Ansible introduction is a very huge change from the original plan, and so we would like to realize the container orchestration. That is an important point from iPro point of view. So is it possible to be the container orchestration in the option?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
So according to iPro members, so container orchestration is very important part in Unimatrix project. Therefore, so we would like to introduce container structure for the Unimatrix project. Is it possible?
So what do you mean with container structure, like how an application is structured, or
structure? So maybe when Ansible is introduced, so the integrators communicate with the edge device via SSH, right?
Yes, for example, or
in
direct
that,
or to containerd. There's no.
in that, containerd is still active, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you can use containerd has a gRPC API that you can use for deploying and running containers. So it can be used to manage the containers on the edge.
So, for example, Hyper is investigating the CRIO, CRIO-O, is instead of containerd. So, is it okay? Is it possible to be the one of the options? Only containerd?
Well, containerd is what we've said so far. I think CRIO is implementing the CRI interface, right? So
why? So the reason why iPro is investigating the CRIO is the containerd is the install size is larger than CRIO. Therefore, so we are investigating CRIO now. Is it difficult?
I don't know if CRIO is implementing the containerd gRPC API. I don't think so.
So as well, so Lancy is larger than the CRAN. Therefore, so iPro is also investigating CRAN interaction.
Yeah, we have looked at CRAN as well. It's a bit smaller.
Maybe so iPro members mentioned in the past meeting. So our system doesn't have the dbus. Therefore, so if there is no dbus, so maybe some solution is needed to introduce the container orchestration by using Railroad. Did you remember the issue about the dbus? According to the meeting minutes, so several companies doesn't have the dbus on the project. You know?
Yes, I remember. So I mean, it's possible to replace dbus with a simple socket communication, but it's of course some work involved.
Therefore, according to Axis, so dbus should be the mandatory.
Well, it is like that right now, but of course it can be it can be changed. I mean, we use dbus internally at Axis, so that's why it's like that. But there's no reason why couldn't have an alternative request mechanism.
It's important to add, I think, in this to this discussion that there are two different or two sides of this dbus dependency. There's one dependency on the dbus system bus itself for session initialization to create a connection between a client application and the Laravel service. But then there is a different side of the dbus dependency in terms of a dependency to the SDBus library for point-to-point communication for serializing and deserializing data on the point-to-point socket communication between the client and the service. So there are two different flavors of that dependency, and so that I think that's an important aspect to that discussion.
Yeah, for sure. So according to iPro's investigation, so it's a little difficult to realize the serialize and deserialize without dbus.
Yeah, I think that is a bit harder to work around. I think the session initialization it's quite easy to come up with an alternative to doing that over the dbus system bus. But it's definitely harder to come up with an alternative for serialization and deserialization of data on the socket peer-to-peer communication. So I think that must be. I think it must be. That dependency must be addressed as two separate ones.
Couldn't you use like protobuf for serialization?
Yeah, in general it is definitely an alternative, but the hard part here is that we over the Unix socket link, we transfer file descriptors, and dbus supports that very nicely, but there is no concept of file descriptors in protobuf.
Yeah, you're right.
So that must be, in case such a mechanism is used. I mean, there is one alternative. If I have thought a lot about this, and I think the way, if we would go for protobuf replacement, in that case we actually need to implement protobuf based RPC in the same way as gRPC does. So there is there is a kind of a plug-in interface to protobuf where you implement your own transport protocol, or whatever we should call it, exactly the same way as gRPC does. I think that is the correct way to do it, but it's a substantial amount of work.
But from iPro's side, is the problem the serialization, or is it that you need the system bus? I think the serialization is just a dependency on Laravel itself, while the other one is a dependency on your whole system. So I think your biggest problem is probably that you need to run dbus daemon, right?
Yeah, the current system doesn't have the dbus. Therefore, so iPro have to add the dbus into our current system.
Mm.
But that dependency, I think, is the easier one to solve.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, we could maybe there could be an option to statically link SD-bus library, the part of the SD-bus library that we use for peer-to-peer socket communication. We could possibly link that statically into the Larod library. That could be one option.
So it does appear that dbus can be run inside a Docker container. I haven't actually tried to do this myself, but I mean, that's an easy way to drop it in.
Yeah, we do it. We do it often like that. We access the host system bus from a container.
But you mean running the dbus daemon itself in a container?
Exactly.
Okay.
So you don't have this dependency on the system.
I think we have. Actually, I think we have done that too. I think we have run Larod with a dbus broker inside a container. Actually. It's the only thing you need to be able to access is the socket socket files that is under /var.
How about the flat buffer?
Yeah, I think. I mean, it could be used, but their protobuf itself does not have any concept for file descriptors. It does not care about file descriptors, so to speak. So, what needs to be done in that case is to extend protobuf in some way to be able to handle file descriptor transfer. Because
so
sorry.
Please. So I remember is about to investigate the flat buffer after now, and so is it no mean?
I don't think flat buffer. I think flat buffers don't have that concept either.
So.
I think in order to be able to transfer file descriptors between processes, you need to build a transport mechanism that is based on Unix domain sockets. That's the only option there, more or less. Otherwise, you need to build some kind of custom Linux kernel module or something like that. I think that is a little quite steep.
A gRPC can be run on a domain socket, but I guess the problem there is protobuf not being able to.
Yeah. It could. I mean, it could be done, but it can't be done with stock gRPC. And I actually saw. I read through a lot of support issues related to this matter on gRPC, and it's pretty clear that the guys that are governing the gRPC project, they are not at all interested in adding support for this kind of features. I mean, it's clearly gRPC is clearly designed for communicating over network between machines, different processes residing on different machines in and out of data centers and so on. So that it's not in the scope for gRPC at all to do things like that. So to me, if what we are trying to solve, if that is to make calls from processes that run inside of a container to services that runs at the host, that's host services on the same machine. To me, gRPC does not really seem right for that purpose. It could be used in some cases, but it does not fulfill all requirements.
So from April's standpoint view, so maybe we have to discuss that thing internally.
It's interesting to reflect a bit on what they have been doing inside of Android, for example, and what they are using, because I think that the problem that they are that is solved in Android, for example, that's very similar to the problem that we try to solve here. We want isolated applications being able to call services that runs on the host operating system, and they have a mechanism that is called binder to do that, and exactly this feature of file descriptor transfer is an important feature of binder. For example,
should we investigate running dbus in a container? I think that's could be a way forward.
That could certainly.
I think if we take this example we already have on GitLab, that if we can modify that one to also start the dbus daemon.
So, Dora-san, what do you think about that?
About the dbus?
Right.
I try to find another RPC library. We now we use the NG open source RPC library. If we have if you guys want to learn about that RPC RPC, I can give a presentation next time, maybe to introduce to you guys to see if it can fulfill the requirements in the can fulfill your requirements. Yeah,
it's very helpful for April. Yeah, please.
Does it allow transfer of file descriptors? Is it using Unix domain sockets, or what is the?
No, it's similar to the gRPC, but it provides several methods to communication. multi to multi, and multi to one to multi, one to one point. This, but I have time. I need more time to learn if it supports the file descript.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I think gRPC is fantastic for network-based TCP/IP based RPC, and protobuf is a really nice language for building an IDL. It's a nice IDL, basically. But I think from my point of view, it solves. We have two different problems here. It could be, of course, be extremely relevant in the context of Unimatrix to do machine-to-machine RPC, and for that, I think gRPC is fantastic. But there is also what we primarily is discussing here when we are talking about IP cameras. We are talking about device internal APIs, and for that, I don't think gRPC is the best solution to call into the host, into services running on the host operating system.
But gRPC can be run on Unix domain sockets, right?
Yeah, it can certainly be used in some cases, but it's in other cases, like for data intensive applications where you need to transfer large amounts of data, like video data, image data, in and out of the container, between the containerized application and the service running outside of the container. I think it's not very well suited. Trying to solve that kind of problem with gRPC is, to me, a bit like trying to screw with a hammer.
Jan, can I probe a little bit on the need to actually move file descriptors around as opposed to, for example, pointers to shared memory?
Yeah, it's one reason is that I mean the main reason to that is performance. There are other reasons as well. It's a bit easier to handle separation between different clients, for example, from security perspective, by not exposing the files in the file system. But the main reason is performance, and we make use in Larod of so-called DMA buffs, which is a Linux kernel concept for sharing data between, for example, one driver that could be some kind of, like, let's say an ISP, an image signal processor that could provide data in the form of an image. That data is then exported to a user space application as a file descriptor that refers to the underlying DMA buffer inside of the kernel. That could subsequently be imported later on to a different driver, for example, one that handles deep learning accelerator, that handles a deep learning accelerator, and that can, by importing the file descriptor, it can get hold of the kernel internal DMA buffer and consume that, and it's extremely efficient from a performance point of view.
I see. So I would also recommend that folks take a look at the work that got done on the ROS Robotic Operating System project about 2 years ago for ROS 3. They were dealing with point clouds as a an imaging source, and it was becoming really problematic for them. So they wrote a shared memory transport mechanism that kind of serves the same purpose spiritually, but I don't know if it actually provides the security guarantees that your DMA approach does. But it is it's given them the same kind of efficiencies that you're looking for here, and I believe that their implementation is pretty portable.
Could you send a link or some as a pointer in the chat?
Sure. Let me just track it down here.
Great.
Sorry, I'm on my cell phone. It may take a few minutes here to actually
All right.
do all the bookkeeping. I'll get it to you shortly when I can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Should we move on from the DBus discussion to? I'd like to hear more from Hikvision what your view on the components of Unimatrix are, and also around orchestration.
Okay. For the requirements of components, I think there is another one we need to consider. It's about the app format. If we want to use the OCI image, but we need to consider how to add some app description into it. For example, the app resources requirement, the RAM requirements, like this kind of information. And yeah, this is another requirement of the components of Unimatrix. And the orchestration use cases, I think there is another use cases is to active the app. It's download the license to the host to active the app. Yeah.
You mean like license key management?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other use cases you're missing?
Another requirement of components is the app format. How to add the app information into the OCR image.
Yeah, either there is you can use OCI and you can write your own things in OCI, or we can do our own manifest, a separate manifest that describes the application and the things like this. So there's two ways to do it, I guess. Maybe the best one is to use our own manifest then rather than parasiting on OCI.
Yes, and we can also add lab to the OCI image, but you mean we don't need to standardize this kind of information in the Unimatrix?
No, I think we should definitely.
Okay.
We haven't talked much about it, but yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
So regarding app management and so on, what from Hikvision side, what tools are you looking at for doing things like that? Like these kind of use cases of mass deploying or mass configuration and distribution of keys and certificates and things. From Axis side, we are looking at Ansible. Does that seem suitable for your cases?
I look into the Ansible in the past months, and it uses SSH, but because of the security consideration, maybe some cameras will not open the SSH port by default. That's my main concern. And yeah.
iPro is also.
Sorry?
We agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the end user can access to the internal part of the camera. Therefore, so we have to prepare the method avoiding the so unknown attack. For example, so basically the security is kept by using rootless or directory presentation or like that. However, so the if the Trojan horse is installed, so in such a case, so the logic is not established. In addition, so if the integrator is a bad guy, so maybe the malicious program may be executed in the kernel. So Frederickson, so how do you keep the security in the internal kernel?
Well, you don't have to have the root account is not needed for the SSH, I guess. I don't know, Sriram, you looked more at Ansible, but it doesn't really. I guess SSH is used in most playbooks, but I mean, you can use alternatives. For the container management, I suggest to use Containerd gRPC API for that. And I guess you don't have to use the root account, right? It can be any account that you connect to SSH with.
Yes.
So yeah, you should not provide the root credentials to use for Ansible.
Yeah, just to have it as an example with how we say log into the virtual machines on cloud servers. When you have your kind of account created, or when the virtual machine was created, you will have a certificate kind of thing or a key file that gets generated, the PUM file, and you use SSH with that PEM file to log into the virtual machine. So as long as the certificate generation or the key generation is secure, I think SSH will use that to say log into the virtual machine, probably in this case log into the camera, and Ansible also does the same. So Ansible need not be run on the camera. The major advantage of Ansible is not running on the camera. It does not need any agent to be running on the camera. All it needs is a SSH connection. So you can run it from any machine as long as you have a connection through SSH to the camera.
And I guess in the device, you can also limit which accounts you can actually log into using SSH. So you can even prevent logging in as root over SSH if that is your security policy.
So does it mean so user ID and a user account is implemented into the camera, right?
Sorry?
Yeah.
So I would like to confirm what you mentioned. So does it mean so the user ID should be implemented into the firmware of the camera, right?
User ID?
So
yeah, it's part of the Linux system, right? You have to have one user that is that you can log in, that can log in over SSH.
But I think if you're using it through SSH -i with the PM file, it is not linked to any specific account. It is just validating through your the PM file as an authorized user.
I'm sorry, but so Sriram-san's voice is very small, and so
yeah,
I can. Okay. I can see. I can hear. Please repeat again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think if you are using SSH with some kind of a -i kind of options, and you give the PM file, it is kind of with a trusted user rather than a specific user ID credentials. So that user ID credential, like username and password, is one approach, and using the PM file is another approach. So it depends on how is implemented on your cameras. Or the security policy of the camera.
Mm-hmm. I understood. Thank you.
I think, I mean, independently on which management tool we select, there will be attack vectors. So, I mean, SSH, of course, it's a well-known port and so on. But if you have the right security mechanisms implemented, it should be secure, and you can. So I don't think just by using SSH, it's necessarily more insecure just because it's a well-known port. I mean, also if you use Kubernetes or something else, it's also got attack vectors and it's using some well-known port numbers and so on. But I don't think Ansible using SSH is necessarily a negative.
For example, Apple is still investigating Kubernetes case, yes. However, so we'll try to introduce AppArmor like that. So I don't know Ansible well. However, so does Ansible have such a secure function to keep the security?
You mean like AppArmor? No, actually, Ansible doesn't really go into the device. It's using.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. You can run AppArmor or things like that if you want.
そっか。From the edge device point of view, the Python and SSH are introduced, right? In that case, so maybe the security solution is needed on the edge device side, and so it's not depends on the Ansible, right?
Yeah, so that's totally orthogonal. So you and I think Unimatrix should not specify those. It's up to each vendor, I think, if you want to run AppArmor or any other kernel framework for security.
But so as long as so Unimatrix use the SSH architecture, so maybe we should provide the end user the reference implementation, reference implementation. How do you feel?
Yeah, you mean for the reference implementation to? Yes, of course.
One of samples.
Yeah. Just as long, I mean, from Axis side, we're working on Ansible playbooks from our end. So that's the road we will probably go for our own devices. And if you have alternative for app management that you are willing to contribute, we should start up that process of contributing. Okay, we have 5 minutes left now. So, is there anything else you'd like to add about either the components or the use cases for app management? Otherwise, we can spend a little bit on development environment.
So I think so. Maybe so. Unimatrix project needs to attract third party because a third party is a contents vendor, and so therefore so if we only provide Larot itself to the third party, maybe so so maybe it's difficult for third party to be interested in the Larot architecture. Therefore, so Unimatrix project should provide, for example, so pre-trained models and sample programs, so that the third party can develop the AI application speedy and efficiently. And for sure, so Unimatrix project doesn't have enough fund. But so, for example, so so we can have the website. Therefore, so the OSS linkage is described on the web page. For example, so if we attract the third party, they may provide the such a modules, pre-trained model, and sample program to the end users. Therefore, that is so. Maybe even if we don't have enough fund, so the way of realizing to attract third party is existed. So what do you think about it? So the in the previous GB call, so it's out of scope. But so
we will book a separate meeting to discuss that about the pre-trained models and so on.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I think Willie-san will send out invitation to that this week.
Okay. Let's discuss the thing in another meeting. Okay.
Okay, I think our time is up. I think we will have regular TB calls now every month. So I will call. I will send out a new invitation this week for the next call to continue discussions.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for joining today, and nice to hear from you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.